It's kind of hard to make a quick Topic Arlo video about this because the very subject of Sony right now, like, it's so huge. It is just staggeringly huge. There is so much to say. I've been meaning to make like a main channel video about just Sony and how this generation, just overall, it just seems like they have really lost their way. And they've been making every, like, wrong decision. And, you know, obviously there's been this big push for live service games, but then Concord flopped. And it's just, it's such a big thing. And we will see if I ever get around to making that big, full video. I'm still not 100% sure because I'm sort of leaning away from those kinds of, like, industry scripted videos or whatever. I just want to, like, do more, like, game reviews and stuff. Kind of keep the industry stuff over here. I don't really know. I don't have any firm plans. So I'm just saying, we'll see if I do that video. But, like, at least right now, this right here is something I have to at least talk about briefly, even if it is going to be hard to not just ramble for an hour. So yeah, Sony, big push for live service games, and then Concord did really poorly, and that made them kind of reconsider how many eggs they should be putting in the live service basket. And it's very funny to even use that analogy, you know, putting all your eggs in one basket, because it seems that now we know they had, I can't even say it. I don't know. There isn't one word. I don't have one word to describe this situation or how it makes me feel. 12 different live service games in development at one time. I understand being, you know, kind of excited by the idea of maybe getting some live service games going. You know, live service games, they can provide a lot more revenue than regular old single player games. Sure, you know, it's possible. You get the whales, you get people buying the microtransactions and the battle passes and what. Like, I can understand being kind of interested in that as a, you know, as an executive at a big company, as an investor or whatever. Like, I sort of get it. But, like, even just, like, before we even get into any of the specifics, it's kind of, it's one of those things where it feels stupid to say it because it so goes without it just common sense. It goes without saying. There can only be so many live service games that are successful in the entire industry at any given time. You're looking at, like, I don't know, is a handful an exaggeration? I don't know, but it's not a lot. And so for one company to think that it's a good idea to produce so many at one time, you can't expect them all to work. Just mathematically, just considering how much of a risk it is to produce a live service game, they're so expensive to make, and they have to really catch on. And the market is already so flooded with them. So it's like, how can you possibly think that's a good idea? How can you think that many are going to work? Or it could just be, I don't know, you throw everything at the wall and you see what sticks. We'll make 12 of them, and if even a few of them catch on, then maybe that will be worth it. I mean, that kind of thinking does not line up with what I'm about to say, what we're about to talk about. So it's just right away, knowing that at one time they had 12. I would have said 4 was too many to be developing at one time. 4 is too many, in my opinion, to consider that, like, you could possibly create and maintain that many, and to imagine that many could even be successful in this gaming landscape. It is so ridiculous. But 12. So yeah, the idea that they were just going to do 12, and they knew that most of them wouldn't do well, but the ones that did do well might make up for it, you know? Sure, that is possible, but that idea doesn't really hold water because basically just Concord flopping has completely derailed their plans in a way that, to me, it almost suggests that, like, were they not thinking about these? I mean, like, these are millionaires. These are millionaires. These are kings of the world, and they're making these decisions about this massive company. They can afford to hire the best minds in the business. And so, you know, just like even just business strategists and people who understand video games and analysts and all these things, I cannot fathom the reasoning behind all of this, because I'm not saying, like, there's a lot of reasons. Maybe they just woke up one day and realized they had made a mistake, but it seems that Concord doing very badly. Maybe they thought even a live service game doing kind of bad to okay is not the worst thing in the world, because it'll at least make back some money. But I think Concord making no money, losing them hundreds of millions of dollars, being such a monumental failure, that has scared them. That has scared the pants off of them, because this is another one of those stories where it's been a few days since this broke, and obviously it's been an ongoing thing. But I hope there are some of you who have not been keeping up with this and have not read the articles about it, because I want what I'm about to say, I want this to impact you more or less the same way it impacted me when I read it. Out of 12 live service games in development at the same time, they have now canceled 8 of them. 8 of them have been canceled. That is just how, I don't know. On the one hand, a course correction is always a good thing. To get back on course, it does, and this is it's a life lesson. It almost doesn't matter how bad things have got and how many mistakes you've made. It's never too late to try to do the right thing, to try to get back on the right course, to clearer waters. So in one way, I applaud them for maybe doing what was right, even if it was very painful and lost them a lot of money. Maybe in the long run, taking this hit right now will be the right decision and mean more success going forward. But then I also have to look at it and be like, again, what were you expecting though? Like, how shaky was your resolve here? How unsure of your own ridiculous, head-first, ridiculously brazen strategy? Like, how little did you actually think about this if you threw yourself at this idea of live service games so hard, and then one failure made you just like, screech, we're going the other way now, and we're canceling everything. I don't know. The company, they're just a bit of a mess right now. The leadership there is really poor. They really just don't know what they're doing. And, some of this could come down, in 2019, right before the launch of the PS5. Shuhei Yoshida left the company, and then, I don't know, the CEOs have changed hands. Herman Hulst is a big player here. I'm not even quite up on, all of the different players, but I know that they're having a leadership problem and just an overall, direction problem, a vision problem. And, yeah, I don't know. So let's read the list, because now we have a list. I have a little list here. I'm on Twisted Voxel, has a nice little summary here. And I guess before I read it, it is important to recognize that a canceled project, it hurts a lot. It hurts a company a ton, because if you have one of your studios, or one of your precious studios, especially if it's one responsible for making some of your most successful and popular games and series and whatnot, having them spend a bunch of time working on a project that later gets canceled, it's not just the loss of the money you spent on the thing, it's the opportunity cost. It's, imagine the game that you could have made instead. You know what I mean? It is a loss in so many ways, and it leaves this big gaping hole in like the release schedule for these companies. It's such a waste of development talent and time, and now you have players who are waiting to play these games and they just can't because there is no game for all of that time and all of that money just down the toilet completely, 100%. Maybe there's something to be said about canceling projects and being able to write it off on your taxes. I know that's a big thing, so maybe they're not losing too much money, and then maybe that is why they are more likely to just cancel it all, because then they can just write it off. I mean, that still doesn't mean just 100% free money, but I don't know. Sure. Okay, so all that said, let's go down the list. First, you have Naughty Dog, The Last of Us Factions. A multiplayer Last of Us game. Because, as you will see in this list, Sony essentially just took all of their most popular first-party IPs and just decided to make a multiplayer game just for all of them. Like, whether it was Herman Hulst or whoever it was, they just went, okay, take them all. Live service game for every single one. It's like if Nintendo sat down and went, okay, we're going to make a live service. Mario, Zelda, Animal Crossing, Pikmin, Metroid, whatever. And, obviously they have a lot of games that already have multiplayer elements, but it's like if they just went, nope, these are going to be strictly online, multiplayer, battle pass and microtransaction fueled games. It's like that. That's what Sony did. And, they were going to make a Last of Us game. And Naughty Dog is kind of famous for taking a really long time with their games. Now you have people who have been waiting just a million years for a new Uncharted game. It seems like they might even be done. I'm not even 100% sure where they are there, but like they moved on to Last of Us, and even those have taken so long. And so even just there, to know that they spent so many years making a multiplayer game and they canceled it in 2023. So like it's a huge blow. It's one of their most important studios, and all of that time is just wasted because they realized at some point, hey, this is actually a stupid idea. This series is not well suited for a multiplayer game. You could. Of course you could. Any series you could, but does that mean that you should? Especially like thematically, the whole theme of the games is like the human brutality and how we should all be on the same team, but we all hurt each other anyway. And like, you're really gonna make a multiplayer game where people are hurting each other, but now it's good and it's fun because you want to be the one who wins? I don't know. It's just stupid. I gotta move on. I'm gonna move on quickly. We'll be here all day. Next, Insomniac was making Spider-Man: The Great Web. That was canceled sometime before 2024. So again, what's popular with Sony? Spider-Man games. Make a multiplayer one. Should you? Does not matter. Do it anyway. They apparently canceled that already. This is actually the first I've heard about it. And it's already canceled. Cool. And then, Arrowhead Game Studios made Helldivers 2. That came out in 2024, and that did well. Okay, yes, it is possible to make a live service game that does well enough. Sure. All right, so that's one. They got one. Even though they screwed up a bunch of that, a bunch of the launch of all that was a whole thing. But like, sure, there you go. So that one did come out. Then another one that this is like the first I've heard of it. Firesprite was making a Twisted Metal live service game, and that was canceled also in 2024. Cool. Then let's see. London Studio was making unannounced fantasy multiplayer game, canceled in 2024 alongside studio closure. So cool. We didn't even have a name. We didn't even know what it was going to be. It just got canceled and the studio just got shut down. And then you have Firewalk Studios, Concord, obviously, that released and canceled very, very quickly last year. There are two Bungie ones. I am not up to date on the whole Bungie situation, but Sony bought Bungie, and it seems they were working on something called Payback, which was canceled in 2024, and Marathon, which is still in active development and will launch sometime this year, allegedly. Bungie already does Destiny 2, so again, I'm not up to date on all this, but the idea of having your studio responsible for an already well-established live service game. I don't know how well it's doing these days. I feel like I've heard not very well. But having them work on another one, a different live service game is already weird, but apparently there were two. So they've canceled only one of them, and we have another one coming this year. So that's one of the ones that has made it for now. Jeez. Then you have Bend Studio, And I love the situation with Bend Studio, how they did Days Gone in 2019, which was a game that was not very well received because at that time, open world zombie game was already such a boring idea. And the game itself just looked, I don't know, like I'm sure it's got its fans. Maybe it's good. I don't know, but it hit at the wrong time. And apparently, I didn't know this. I've been waiting. Okay, when is Bend gonna do their next game and make up for Days Gone? Well, apparently they haven't released anything since 2019. It is now 2025, so 5 or 6 years they've been working on a live service game, which has now been canceled. Cool. Recently, I guess. And yeah, this whole thing came up because the Bend game got canceled. And then Blue Point. Oh, this is great. This is good. Blue Point. Really talented developers. They have specialized in these really amazing remasters and remakes. They did the Demon's Souls remake. They did the Shadow of the Colossus remake / remaster, whatever it was. Really talented, really good developers. And for years now, we've had this rumor that, oh man, Blue Point, they're making a new game. It's not even going to be like a remaster. It's going to be like a new game. And it's been really exciting. And I've been waiting to see what they were doing. And Sony's not releasing any games. It's like, well, at least Blue Point's working on something. Sony bought them. Apparently, it was a God of War live service game that has now been canceled. So, like, jeez. Now, especially in the case of Sony Bend and Blue Point, they've both been working on live service titles, presumably for the last, 4 or 5 years, both of which are now canceled, and they're starting at square one. Like, today, essentially. They're starting at square one to create some sort of new thing that's not the thing. It just, all those years, down the toilet. This generation, we will not get games from these studios because they were canceled. And then you have Haven Studios is making something called Fair Games with a $ as the S, and that apparently is also still in active development. And the launch window is TBD. And then finally we have Guerrilla Games, who does the Horizon games, and they are still making a Horizon live service game. That's one of the ones that hasn't been canceled yet. They canceled the God of War one, but not the Horizon one. They're still doing that. Launch window still TBD. But funny story, I brought up that I was about to record this video to Kane, and he pointed me to the fact that literally hours ago, literally a few hours before I recorded this, a story broke that apparently a Horizon MMO has been canceled. But this was not the same thing. This was not even the same live service Horizon game. This was a different one. This was a mobile game that was gonna be an MMO, and it got canceled too. Sony had 2 live service Horizon games in development at one time, and it's now canceled one, meaning that this dozen eggs in their basket is now a baker's dozen. It's now actually technically 13. 9 of which have been canceled. So that's the list. They have now narrowed it down to just a small handful of live service games that they're still working on. An amount of games that I would still say might still be too many, might not be very... I mean, like, maybe if they line it up so that they're releasing one per year, sure, I don't know. A new live service game every year, maybe that's not the worst idea. I don't know, but at the same time, you still have Helldivers. That's still doing well. How many can you expect to support and to do well? I really don't know. But, like, yeah, it's the lost potential, and this generation has just been like nothing for Sony. It's a nothing generation. For Xbox too, but that's a whole other conversation. I've just kept waiting for them to start making the games this gen, and they have just kind of not. And I just been wondering this whole time, where are the games? Where are they? Why is this happening? Why are just years going by with like nothing interesting coming out? I've got Demon's Souls, which was a launch game, and I loved it, but that was it. And Astrobot. Loved Astrobot. And I have a PSVR 2 I never play, and I absolutely regret buying. And it seems that we now have our answer. We do. Sony put, like, I don't know. I don't know how many studios they have. I don't know how many are represented here, but it seems to me that most of their most notable studios have been put on live service games that have now been canceled, and we are not going to get games from these series or these studios for this entire generation. We're gonna have to wait for the PS6. That's why this is a whole generation with almost no games. And I mean, it's nice to have the answer. It's kind of nice to know what's going on, and it's not nice to know that this isn't going to stop anytime soon. There was always this idea, oh, maybe this will be the year that they announce a bunch of games. Maybe this will be the year. But now we know, no, no, we're not going to get new games from any of these studios. I mean, development costs keep rising. Development timelines keep getting longer and longer. No, it'll probably be like, I don't know, halfway through the PS6 generation or something before we get these games. It's absurd. The whole thing is just absurd, and I suppose I should just stop there and let what we've talked about kind of rest, because, yeah, what even is there to say? I mean, there's everything to say, but, like, right now, today, can't even believe it. Can't even believe it. 13 games. All at the same time, and have canceled 9 of them because Concord flopped. I guess because they realized that worst case scenario is not a game coming out and doing mediocre. That's probably the worst case scenario they were hoping for. Maybe it'll even almost come a little, not pay for itself entirely, but pay for itself enough. No, Concord was a pure loss. I think it probably made $20. I don't know. I think any of us probably made more money this last year than Concord did. It was just a complete and utter failure. And I guess, I don't know, maybe they never anticipated that a game could do that poorly, and since it did, and this was only one of the first to release with this big live service push, it was one of the first, and for it to do that poorly, they were like, we gotta cut our losses. We just can't afford for all of these games to come out and potentially perform similarly. So yeah, I don't know. Again, course correction is good, but it's also just really, really indicative of a really sick Sony and just a really sad and weird situation with them.